Hey, my name is Samar. I also go by Sam or First Time Panner. Any of those you want to call me, you can. This will be a video that was inspired by Steph from It's Just Steph, and she'll of course be linked in the description box, but I'm sure you already know who she is and you're already subscribed to her. She's another Minnesota girl who loves makeup just like me, so definitely subscribe. She's really fun. She's one of my favorite people to watch on YouTube. As you can see from the title, this will be an eyeshadow palette tournament, and this is part 1 of 4. Basically, when I saw Steph's video, I'll link her eyeshadow tournament. Maybe she has a playlist, but I'll link the first video in that series in my description box. But basically she was I think she was like inspired by March Madness, and she was pitting all of her eyeshadow palettes against one another to see, who would come out as the champion. And I thought the idea was really fun, but I could never do it until now because I didn't have enough eyeshadow palettes for it to be like even throughout the, like tournament. But I'm here to tell you I currently have exactly 64 eyeshadow palettes in my entire collection, which is crazy because that's way too many. That's more than anyone should ever have or could ever use, but I do. So I thought it was the perfect opportunity to do this video myself, because everything fits perfectly and will rank together in even numbers. So I split my eyeshadows into 4 different categories, and that was luxury or splurge, high-end / like mid-range, drugstore or affordable, and then indie. And of course not every eyeshadow palette is going to fit in these exact categories, but I just separated them all by those categories, and then from there I moved things around a little bit just so that I could have 16 eyeshadow palettes in each category. So some of these might be like, why did you put this in that category? But if you run into that, it's because I had to switch things around just to make everything fit so that these categories could be as even as possible and as fair as possible. And in each of these, I'm gonna have 4 videos in this series. Each one is going to be a different category, and I'm going to start with all of my palettes in that category against each other, and then go until the winner. You will see the entire category ranked in each video. When we get to the final 4, I am thinking of doing something special with the final 4 palettes, maybe doing like a look with each palette and then ranking them. I haven't figured it out exactly yet, but we'll just have to see how this goes. But stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy this video. I'm finally back with the 3rd installment of this little palette tournament series, and yeah, sorry if you missed my community post. I was unexpectedly out of town. You probably heard in my recent videos, but yeah, I was out of town, not prepared to be out of town, so I couldn't film this, but I'm here now and I'm ready to do my, luxury / splurge category of the tournament. I will say the luxury category is probably the most mismatched one, so just expect some palettes to be kind of like, okay, that's not a luxury palette, or like that should be in a different category. But I'll just get started with the first match of the first round, which is definitely probably the most confusing as to why these palettes are against each other. But in the first round, the first palettes that were randomized together are my Natasha Denona Baby Bronze palette and my Milani Gilded Mini palette in the shade, or in the color story, Whiskey Business, which I always say I love that name so much. Clearly this is very much a drugstore palette, so it should have been in my last video in the series, but I had to move things around. I didn't really want to split brands up, and this is like the only palette I have from this brand, so I just threw it into this category. But believe it or not, Whiskey Business actually does win this match, because, okay, you probably, if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you probably know how I feel about Natasha Denona, the brand in general. I don't support the brand anymore, and I've talked about that a lot in my past videos, so I'm not going to do it in this one. But even if we're putting that aside, brand ethics, yeah, I just like don't really like her quality at all. Like, not really in the slightest, other than one exception, which I'll talk about later. I'm not gonna swatch out all of my palettes in their entirety, but this is just 3 pans. So this is what it looks like. It's actually in my No Pan Left Behind series this month. I've already used it, so it got like a fair shot, and that was like the first time I ever used it, but that was just a couple days ago. So the quality and the experience is fresh in my mind. And this whole tournament is supposed to be about like what is my favorite palette in my collection, and for me that has like multiple factors. So it's like what really sparks joy, what do I get excited to reach for, and what is like really the most useful and practical and easy to use. And this like honestly has none of that. I don't like Natasha Denona's formula. I think it's incredibly overpriced, and even a lot of her stuff, especially her neutrals, which is what this entire palette is, they like are not good quality even for like drugstore prices, and this is luxury prices. So obviously not choosing this, and I could only get one like exact same look out of this every single time I used it, so I am not even excited to reach for it. The one time I used it, it was just out of obligation because it was in my project. Yeah, the Milani Gilded Mini, it's fine. It's like typical drugstore quality. It's like better than my like, I can't even remember what they were. I decluttered all of them. My CoverGirl like nude eyeshadows, that's an outlier. This I would say is like kind of the typical standard drugstore quality, so it's nothing like super crazy good, but it's like a very good companion palette for me to have because I'll open it up. Yeah, as you can see, it's a completely matte, completely like nude neutral palette. Well, not neutral, some of these are more warm tone, but it's completely like brown nude mattes, and yeah, it's a good companion to have, and so for that reason it is like way more useful in my collection. So it won over the Baby Bronze. Next up we have 2 Pat McGrath palettes. This is the mini Sublime, yeah, this is the Eye Ecstasy Sublime. This has been discontinued for years. I got it right before the last batch sold out. It's just a 5-pan palette with 4 metallics and then 1 matte with glitter, which if you know me, you know I do not like that formula at all, but this is probably the best matte with glitter I've ever tried from any brand. It's like, it's decent, so I'll take it. And this is also in another one of her palettes that I have, so I'm kind of used to using it. Then we have Deep Space Divinity, which is just a quad, 1 matte and 2 metallics, and then 1 duochrome metallic. And yeah, I bought this because I got it, well, this is a long story, but basically I wanted this for so long, I couldn't get it, so I bought Interstellar Icon, ended up loving that one, and then this came back in stock for a limited time, so I snatched it up, but realized that I like Interstellar Icon better. So long story short, that's what happened. I do still like this palette, but I think like it's just a little bit difficult for me to use all in one. This is definitely more of a companion palette, which is perfectly fine. I don't need all of my palettes to be like standalone palettes, and the quality is still really amazing, just like every Pat McGrath Labs palette I've ever tried, except for the Midnight Voyage one, but I ended up having to declutter that one anyway. That's Roxy playing with her tail, by the way. I know I just said I wasn't going to swatch every palette in their entirety, but I already broke my rule. I swatched both of them out completely because these are like both smaller palettes, and then also I love like not only the color stories are really great in these palettes, but the formula, like They're so smooth. I just love swatching them. So this is like obviously the quad, and then this is the quint. Okay, there's someone outside my window. But basically, yeah, I do love both of these palettes. I mean, this duochrome is really, really pretty, and on top of this like kind of cranberry-ish shade, it does look really nice if I want like a super bold look. But I did decide to choose the Sublime Quint just because I think, I don't know, these are just my tones. Like, I love these earthy, like, I don't know, these like more fall tones. I do think this green right here is better for spring. This top one swatched out right here. I also feel like this palette would be really easy to use because you do have that one matte, and then all 4 of these other shades work well with that one brown tone. So it's just like really easy to use from the color story and the formula. It's like one of the most beautifully formulated palettes I have in my entire collection. So of course I'm gonna go with this one. I love it so much, and I've said this 1,000 times, but I'll say it again. I really need to get more use on this. I haven't even used it yet because it hasn't been in my No Pen Left Behind series yet, but I am thinking of like making this a pen that palette at some point in the very near future. So yeah, of course I have to choose this one. Next match is my Kaleido Sashimi City versus my Melt She's and Parties palettes. These are both still in the packaging, like in the box, so I have to take them out really quickly. This is definitely the hardest round so far. I love both of these palettes, and like technically I think both of these palettes are also indie brands instead of like mainstream luxury brands, but Melt is just like so expensive. I threw it into this category anyway for numbers, and then because Kaleidos is an international brand and I have to pay a lot in like extra fees and extra shipping, I figured I could put it in this category. But like I think both of these are technically indie brands, just to be transparent. And yeah, I really love both of these palettes so much. They're just really beautiful. This one of course is purples, and I love purples. Like, I love purple makeup in general. And then this is such a beautiful yet easy palette to wear. I talk about both of these a lot, and it's really hard because this one is like so easy. I always know the exact same look that I'm gonna do with this. I always do the same thing, and it always turns out so beautiful and effortless because it's just very straightforward, but the shadows are really so beautiful and suit my skin tone. And then with the She's and Parties, it's just like the formula is so good on this as well, like top Melt formula. I think there are also a few shades in here that I don't have anywhere else in my collection, and I really love this palette for that as well. And it's just so compact and nice. I will say, when I did first like do these rounds like ahead of time, because I've pre-planned all my picks. Sorry, this one's closing on you. I did initially pick the Melt She's and Parties palette, but I've said many times, like, I feel like in the moment, like depending on my mood fluctuating and the usage I'm getting on these palettes and like re-experiencing them, even though I haven't used either of these since I like picked, I think I am actually going to change my answer and pick the not the She's and Party, the Sashimi, I swear I can't talk, Sashimi City palette. That's what I'm gonna pick. I'm changing my answer live. Yeah, sorry to this palette. I have gone back and forth a lot with the She's and Parties palette just because testing it out this year, I have come to terms, I'm being dramatic, I've come to terms with the fact that like maybe I don't love it as much as I like initially loved it, or the first time I used it, just because of like the repeating shades and the fact that there's so many very deep shimmers. I still love that palette so much. I mean, I picked it to move on the first time I made these choices, but this palette I love so much just because like this is the palette that I've been complimented on most, and it's like such a super basic, like small neutral palette, but it is so beautiful. Like, it's that beautiful that like strangers walking past me on the street will stop me to compliment my eyeshadow and ask what I'm wearing. And even more than that, just like I feel beautiful in this palette, I feel really like the two shimmers here, I'll swatch them. As you can see here, like even on camera, they just look out of this world. They're so beautiful. And when I like tap them onto my lid after I've done all of my mattes, I feel like a fairy. Like, I feel so pretty in them. And yeah, I think like, yeah, it's just like definitely a palette, like top 10 favorite palettes in my collection, just for like the effect it gives me and how I feel when I wear it. And yeah, I love it so much. So Sashimi City is moving on. Next we have another Futurism palette, and that's the Lunar Lavender from Kaleidos, and then also the Natasha Denona Mini Star palette. I really feel like you should know which palette I'm gonna choose, but I'll talk about them anyway. This was one of the first palettes I ever bought in general, and this was the first Natasha Denona palette I ever bought, so I was unaware of, you know, the struggles that I'd have in the future. And I have thought about decluttering this palette so many times in like the past 2 years, but I have kept it for a few shades, which I'll swatch. But then we also have the Lunar Lavender palette from Kaleidos, and I really love this so much. I get 2 looks out of this instead of the one like I do from Sashimi City, but you know, still pretty like basic because I do the same 2 looks every time. But I love the looks that I get every time I do it. And just like last time, these 2 shimmers, like metallic, kind of like thicker, creamier shimmers, they're so beautiful. One is a duochrome and the other one is like kind of a brighter lilac, which I usually don't even like on me, and I love it so much. So let me swatch some things out for you. Here are the 3 like shimmer type shades from the Mini Star. This is a blue brown duochrome, and on the eyes it really does not show up even to this much of a flip as like it's supposed to. Like, it just looks brown pretty much, and then sometimes it looks blue. It's really one of the worst blue browns I've ever tried, not even like just for Natasha Denona in general. The only reason I'm keeping that palette around is because it's definitely not for the mattes, because those actually suck. The only reason I'm keeping the palette is because of these 2 metallics. This one, it's not unique, but it is the type of shade that I like, one of those grungy like browny golds. And then this like pink metallic shimmer, pink is definitely not my favorite shade, but it's fine for like an everyday look. So if I ever were to reach for this palette, that's probably what I would use with these mattes, because the other 2 shades don't really work well enough with those mattes because they don't show up. And then these are the 2, oh my god, they're so bright that it's like blinding you, I'm sorry, but like they're just so amazing. This is the duochrome that you can't even see because it's so beautiful and reflective, and then this is the lilac shade. They're so pretty. I love them so much. Obviously Lunar Lavender is winning. We have 2 Pat McGrath palettes against each other, and these are both like bronze versions of their line. So this is the, everyone's seen this one, this is the 6 palette Bronze Ambition. This is kind of like a classic, I feel like. And then this is the Bronze Ecstasy from the one of her newest lines, the Bijou Brilliance holiday collection from 2023. Here are both of the palettes. I really love both of these for different reasons. The Bronze Ambition is like my Thanksgiving palette. I wear it every Thanksgiving since I've had it for some reason. I don't really know why, but I mean the tones are really good for like November, fall time, and you know, those like pumpkin pie tones. And then we have the Bronze Ecstasy, which I love so much. I've talked about this in a few separate videos, but this was a little bit of an impulse purchase, and I'm so glad I did it. I have no regrets. This is one of my favorite purchases of 2024. I get 2 different looks out of this every time I use it. Like a warm toned grungy look, and then a beautiful pink like purpley berry look, and I love it so much. The formula on both of these I really don't have to elaborate. It's Pat McGrath, and both of these are Pat McGrath level qualities. I will say this one right here is the other one where I said there's a matte with glitter in it in a different palette. This is the one right here, so that is a drawback for me. Other than that, I really have no gripes with this palette. That's kind of the only downside. Or also, it is a little bit bulky, but I don't really take this with me traveling because it's way too expensive to be damaged or lost, so that doesn't matter too much. But still, the winner is the Bronze Ecstasy. I love this palette so much. It is so beautiful and the quality is such perfection, and I am going to swatch this entire palette right now. This is what it looks like, and it is so pretty. This one didn't swatch as well, but it looks amazing on the eyes. It's like this purpley berry tone, and it looks amazing with these two pinks right here. And then I combined this like more cool tone brown with this like slightly warm grungy gold. This grungy gold is like one of the main reasons I bought this palette. I love it so much, and like the metallic shimmer colors are so beautiful and creamy and so pigmented and smooth. Like they really pack a punch without having any texture at all. And then the mattes blend well. I think this purple one is more of like almost a satin, but both of them blend so well. Like I don't even have to set my eyeshadow primer. They don't skip, they don't catch on anything, they're not patchy. Yeah, like 1 in a million formula with a beautiful color story that suits my skin tone, so I love it. Again, we have the same brand going against itself, and that is Melt Cosmetics. So this is the brunette palette, and this is the Mary Jane. You probably know which one's gonna win. Here's the brunette palette, and this is kind of just like a really simple but beautiful basic neutral palette. I usually combine these two to get more of a neutral shade. And then there's like one of these, this one on the very end, the lightest one. I don't use it, but other than that, really easy. I get kind of the same two looks out of it, so for 8 shades it doesn't give me that much variety, but I do really like it and it's easy to use. Definitely not bad quality at all. I heard that some melt palettes, I've never experienced this, but I've heard that some melt palettes are, I'll just say, not the best in formulation. This one, while the formula is drier, like in a sense, it's not like the mattes are not as powdery and like really smooth and buttery, and then the metallics for the most part are like dry metallics. It's not a bad formula, it's still really good. And we have the Melt Mary Jane palette, which I've talked about so many times. I repurchased this because I thought I lost mine and I was not gonna live without this. It's just an incredibly beautiful, cool toned neutral palette. It goes very deep, as you can see, but I have a medium skin tone, so that's perfectly fine for me. I have no problem with this. Obviously, this is the winner. I love this one so much. This is definitely top 3 palettes in my entire collection. This is my favorite palette for winter. I say that all the time. Like every winter, I can't get myself to stop reaching for this. And yeah, I love it so much. I'm so happy to have this in my collection. Next up, these are like 2 rivals. I feel like every time someone does a review of one of these brands, they always have the other brand like mentioned sometime in their review. I don't know what it is about these two, but basically, you know, Pat McGrath, Interstellar Icon versus Natasha Denona Metropolis. This is the Interstellar Icon quad I was talking about earlier when I was talking about my other Pat McGrath quad. I love this one so much, and I always say mostly it's for this blue, because this is a blue purple duochrome and it's so pretty. It's my favorite blue in my entire collection. Here's what the palette looks like swatched, and here you can see or can you see the duochrome? I don't know if it's showing up exactly on the screen, but it's super beautiful. Maybe you can see it better on my finger. And then we have like a gold metallic, what I consider to be a satin, like berry purpley color, and then deep grungy gold metallic. So again, for me, this is a companion palette, but I'm totally okay with that because I love every single shade in here individually, and the formula is great. Then we have the Metropolis palette. Earlier I was saying the one exception to the formulae of Natasha Denona that I don't absolutely despise is her cream to powder formula. And this palette, I think this is still discontinued. She brought it back for a limited time, but this was and is the palette of hers that has the most cream to powder shadows in it. So like, in my opinion, this is her best palette. And I also really like the tones in here, which is why I bought it before I even really, I had wanted this before I really knew anything about her brand. This is the first palette of hers that I did want, but at the time it was discontinued. I eventually bought it on sale when it was brought back, and it was still over $100. Definitely not worth the money. If I could get my money back for this palette, I would. Though I will say it does come in handy every once in a while because this does have shades that I don't really have anywhere else in my collection. And because those shades are the cream to powder formula shades, that is why I keep this palette. But otherwise, you know, like the neutrals don't show up too well, and they don't show up true to tone. Other than this metallic right here, which I use as an inner corner shade, I really do like it. It's so pretty. It has a little bit of a flip. I don't think you can see it, but other than that, one shade, the metallic formula, is nothing special at all. This one right here is kind of nice too. It does have a flip, but yeah, the formula is nothing special. I don't ever like think to reach for this because I want to reach for it. The only time I ever use it is when it's either in a project or when I need a specific shade out of this palette because I don't have it anywhere else. Yeah, it does. I'm holding it upside down. It doesn't really spark joy at all. And I do kind of get mad every time I do think about it because it was a waste of money and I just don't like the brand in general. Here's what the two shades I swatched look like. Of course, the Interstellar Icon is gonna win. The last match for the first round is my Melt Gemini versus my Huda Beauty Naughty Nude, and there are kids playing outside, in case you're wondering what that was. Don't worry about them. As you can see, I did take the slippery shade out of this just because I didn't think I was going to use it, and I didn't want it potentially molding because it was a cream shadow, so I took it out. So everything else is a winner for me. There isn't one dud shade in this palette. The only thing I would say is there are a few shades, or there's one shade where I think, like, I don't know why it's in this palette. The shade Arouse here is just very warm tone, and the rest of the palette is either like neutral, like deep purple, or like pinky tone neutrals. So I don't know why that shade is in this palette. I still like it and it's still a really great formula, but that is my one gripe with this palette. It's very out of place. Then we have the Gemini palette, which I love so much. I was so happy when I got this palette. It was an impulse purchase, but just because it was on sale, I have been wanting this for a long time. I love the greens in here. Green is my favorite eyeshadow to wear, of course. And then the neutrals in here work so well. Everything is well formulated in this palette and like just pigmented enough to stand out but not be patchy and skip. I will say Gemini is supposed to be like a peachy gold duochrome, but on me it only shows up gold, so it's not really duochrome for me for whatever reason, but I still do really like it. I love this palette so much, but the winner is still the Naughty Nude palette. I just absolutely love this so much. Yeah, there are just shades in here that are so out of this world beautiful. Like the effect, there are so many different like formulae of shadows. I can't stop saying formulae after I started watching a bunch of Irish YouTubers. I think that's technically how you're supposed to say it, but it just feels so weird whenever I say it. These two shadows are so like unbelievably beautiful to me. I love them so much. They're just like such beautiful metallics, and the top one is even a duochrome. And then you have this like weird one, Flower Power, which is like incredibly dusty. and I'll even swatch it for you. Like, it goes on weird, but then when you like blend it out and sheer it out, it turns into this super beautiful topper shade, which is how I use it. And then on top of the just beautiful shades, it has one of the best formulas that I've ever tried. So Naughty Nude wins this one, and now we're on to round 2. First match of round 2 is the Milani Gilded Mini Whiskey Business versus the Pat McGrath Labs Eye Ecstasy Sublime Quint. I don't even feel like I really needed to open these up to show you. Like, I'm sorry, but this one is obviously winning. Like, this is, as I said, a great companion palette, but like it nowhere near compares to this one. Not only like would I never ever declutter this, and I could see myself getting rid of this if like I needed to free up space, but also like I get so happy when I even think about this. So obvious winner, easy match. I almost grabbed the wrong palette because I forgot, I switched up my choice last minute, but yet again we have brand versus brand, and that is Kaleido. So I have my two Futurism palettes going against each other. So will I ever say this name correctly on the first try? I don't think so. Sashimi City versus Lunar Lavender. This is really hard, and it's another last minute decision because this originally was not supposed to be the match. So okay, making a live decision, I'm not gonna do this as if like if I had to declutter one, because I don't even want to think about that, and that's not really what this video is about either. If I just had to go by like truly my favorite when I think about it, I would have to say Sashimi City is still winning, just because like this is so beautiful and I absolutely love every time I use this. But I think maybe it's just the fact that I feel like this may be a case of like this palette just always exceeding my expectations every single time I use it, because it's so unassuming, but also it like does give me some of the most beautiful eyeshadow looks. I mean the same look, but some of the most beautiful eyeshadow days I've ever had in the like 3.5 years I've been wearing eyeshadow. We're also at a match that was genuinely difficult for me to decide. Eventually I did decide on one, but I mean, you know, we have the Bronze Ecstasy versus the Mary Jane, and these are like two of some of the best formulated palettes in my entire collection, and they're also color stories that I cherish and I love and give me some of the most beautiful looks I've ever done. I feel like I'm saying the same thing I said last round, but these are truly like my tippity top favorites, and both of these would definitely be in my top 10 palettes, I would say. And I love both of them. This one is so difficult because I love the Bronze Ecstasy for all of the reasons I said earlier. Great color story, super useful. This would also be, if I took my expensive palettes traveling, this would be a really great palette to have. If I like went on a weekend trip, like just on a little road trip, I would bring this, because it's great to have like two super basic looks that look great, but you know they're gonna work out. Like, you don't have to worry about them being patchy or anything. So I do really love this palette, but it had to be the Mary Jane that won. I love this one so much, and just the fact that I've used it so much out of projects. Not that I wouldn't use this one when it's not in a project, but I have reached for this so many times even with it not being in a project, and it's my favorite winter palette. For an entire season, for a palette to be your favorite, that's saying something. I feel like this one might be my second favorite winter palette, but this one's the first, so I have to choose it over the other one. Then we have Interstellar Icon versus Naughty Nude, and I feel like, you know, these are just such different palettes. This is a little companion quad, and this is like a super fleshed out, other than that like one warm tone, like well thought out, like complete palette for me. So I don't know if it was exactly fair to put these together, but it was just how they were randomized. And I really did think that potentially the Interstellar Icon could win the entire round, because I do love and cherish this palette so much. Definitely a favorite. Also, you're gonna think I'm such a liar because I keep saying this, but like both of these palettes would be in my top 10 palettes in my entire collection. But if I had to say which was like a favorite, like this has my favorite blue shade in it, which is why I really thought it would win. But honestly, just, and I've said this before in a recent video, sometimes I forget about my Pat McGrath palettes. Not that it's not one of my favorite formulae in my entire collection, because I love her stuff, but sometimes I literally just forget that I own them, and it's not until they come up in a project where I remember to use them. So even though I love this so much and it's stunning and great quality, if I forget about them sometimes, I can't really say that it's my favorite over a palette that, you know, I reach for time and time again. I put in projects just to use it without feeling guilty, which is dumb. But yeah, Naughty Nude wins, long story short. On to the third round. We only have 4 palettes left, so you know that this is going to be like truly difficult, because I clearly love these so much for them to be my top 4 luxury eyeshadow palettes. Again, this is turning into a domino effect, because like this one wasn't supposed to be here, but it is, and it keeps winning. So I keep having to make these live decisions, which maybe that's like entertaining for you, but it's stressing me out because I'm limited in storage space, so I need to speed this decision up. But we have the Sublime Mini versus Sashimi City, and I finally said it right on the first try. It's really, I feel like this is the hardest match so far, because like I keep saying I love the look that I get from this so much. Like one of my favorite looks out of all the eyeshadow looks I've ever done. And then we have this like what is seemingly the perfect eyeshadow palette for me. But based on my logic from the last match, I'm gonna say, because I don't use this as much as I should, because I sometimes forget about my Pat McGrath palettes, I'm gonna choose the Kaleidos palette. I feel like I've been saying it differently every time, Kaleidos or Kaleidos, but Sashimi City's winning. However, I will say this round was so, or this match was so hard, but if I had used this more often recently, this one might have won. It's just kind of like, objectively, I have not used this as much as I've used the other palette. Final match before the final match. That was not properly worded, but we have the Melt Cheese and Parties versus the Huda Beauty Naughty Nude, and this is incredibly tough because I would say like these are my favorite palettes for each of their categories. This is my favorite like grungy cool tone palette, and this is my favorite like pinky nude palette. Not that I really love pinks, so that's like, it sounds like I'm not saying much, but I do love pinky nudes, and this is definitely my favorite palette for that, and just also like all of the beautiful textures and tones it brings. So this one is also very difficult. Ultimately, Mary Jane did win. I feel like this kind of has to win just because of how much like I think about this palette when I'm not using it. Like I can't wait to use it. And then I just swatched some shades because I didn't swatch this shade yet in this, or this palette yet in this video. And I wanted to tell you how much I love that shade, Sweet Lucy. And then also this one, I think this one's Sinsemilla. I used to like think this was just like a really pretty shade, but it wasn't too useful for me. And then when I had it in my No Pan Left Behind series this year, I just like found how much I absolutely love this shade as well. This one's still my favorite. I love it so much, but these are both stunning, and I think for this shade alone would probably top almost any other palette in my collection. So the Mary Jane did win this match, and now we're down to the final two. So we have Sashimi City versus Mary Jane, And before we get into it, can we acknowledge that this one was supposed to be eliminated in the first match, or like the first round, and now like it's in the top 2. I'm proud of her. Like, she did a lot in this video, but yeah, these are like my top 2 favorite luxury or expensive indie palettes, I guess, because like technically both of these should have been in the indie category. I guess that's really saying something about indie eyeshadow. I like them more than my mainstream luxury palettes. But anyway, down to business. Which one do I like more? That's incredibly difficult, and again, I'm having to make a live decision with this because I really didn't plan on this one getting this far. But actually, just some background information, the one that this was supposed to be, like the Melt Cheese and Parties, was actually going to be against Mary Jane in this final match. So yeah, that's how much like of a last minute decision that swap was. I really do love the Cheese and Parties palette, but you know, this one just won today. Maybe I would have changed my mind a different day, but anyway, I'm stalling because I don't want to make this decision. But if I'm just being honest with myself, Mary Jane is gonna win, especially with how much I love Sweet Lucy. I just like, I can't let this palette lose this category. Like, it needs to be one of the final 4. So yeah, Mary Jane is winning for the luxury splurge category, and I'm very satisfied with this. I did have a feeling, I didn't know this was gonna win when I was like creating this list, but I had a feeling it potentially could. This one I feel like is always a contender for being a favorite palette in my collection in general, because I do love and use it so much. So not surprised this one. Sorry, the kids are out playing, it's summertime. But yeah, this one wins, and now there's only one category left, indie, like the true indie category, even though this won. Okay, I just ran out of storage, and my phone's about to die, and my eyes are watering so much that my makeup's running. My stomach's grumbling and the kids are getting loud, so it's perfect timing to end this video here. But yeah, stay tuned for next Sunday. I promise you the video will be on time on Sunday. I hope you enjoyed this one, but yeah, I'll just have to see you in my next video, which will be my deck of panning update. And let me know if you would have chosen any different palettes other than the ones I chose. Do you think the Cheese and Party should have won over Sashimi City? Because originally it was going to be against the Mary Jane. Granted, the Mary Jane probably would have still won, and I guess we'll have to see next week which palette is going to win in my indie category, and then we'll see if this one would have won over that. But yeah, that's for the future. Right now, I hope you have a great day. Bye.